You know how sometimes the most captivating stories aren't really the big front page splashes,
Hmm.
but they're the hidden dramas, the ones playing out just, beneath the surface, the personal ambitions that kind of collide and end up reshaping things.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where we're headed today, isn't it?
Yeah, we're doing a deep dive into this moment in Indian politics, 2002 specifically.
Yeah.
It looks like a straightforward presidential election on the surface, but trust me, is way more complex.
It really is. It's this fascinating web of aspiration, unexpected twists, and the surprising impact of someone few really saw coming in that particular role.
Totally.
And what's so intriguing, I think, is how the ambitions of one really prominent political figure, Farooq Abdullah, just took this completely unexpected turn.
Right, because of someone else's rise.
Exactly, because of APJ Abdul Kalam. So picture it.
Yeah.
Early 2002. You've got Farooq Abdullah, very charismatic, seasoned leader, chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir.
A major player, decades of experience.
Right, navigated incredibly turbulent political waters.
Right.
And he clearly had his sights set on the national stage.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't just a regional figurehead. You have to remember his party, the National Conference. I mean, it's deeply woven into Kashmir's identity.
Mm-hmm.
He spent years dealing with incredibly sensitive stuff, and it really felt like, okay, he's ready for that bigger platform.
And that platform, it seemed, was the vice presidency.
Which is significant, right? It's a national spotlight, a real chance to influence things, and let's be honest, maybe a stepping stone even higher.
Potentially, yeah.
For Farooq, it must have felt like the perfect way to cement his legacy, beyond just Kashmir.
And what made it even more compelling was the strategy behind it. This sort of, carefully planned political move.
The 2-for-1 deal.
Exactly. The plan, as people understood it, was Farooq moves to Delhi, becomes vice president,
Right.
which then nicely creates an opening for his son, Omar Abdullah, to step in as chief minister back in Jammu and Kashmir.
It seemed so neat, didn't it? Almost elegant. A smooth transfer of power. Good for them, maybe good for the region. Looked like a solid plan.
Yeah, it had that symmetry. Father moves up, son takes the reins at home. Looked like one of those, rare political wins everyone could point to.
But then, politics happened.
Politics happened. June 2002, the ruling NDA coalition just throws this curveball nomination.
Balin.
APJ Abdul Kalam for president. And look, to really get the impact, you need to remember who Kalam was to India at that moment.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't your typical politician at all.
Not even close. Scientist, huge respect. The missile man, right? After the missile program, Pokhran II.
He was a national hero, basically, admired across the board.
Totally. He kind of stood apart from the usual political squabbles. And his nomination, wow, it just resonated.
It really did, like a moment of collective national pride. Even the opposition, Sonia Gandhi's Congress Party, they found it really hard to oppose him.
How could they?
Exactly. So the result was, a landslide. July 2002, he wins big. He became the people's president. And that title really fit, didn't it?
It absolutely did. Captured the public mood perfectly. But here's the twist for Farooq.
Right. Kalam's victory, celebrated everywhere, suddenly becomes this massive hurdle for Farooq Abdullah's VP dream.
And it all comes down to those unwritten rules, those powerful conventions in Indian politics about, diversity in the top offices.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. We're talking about this sort of implicit understanding, right? That the big jobs, president, vice president, prime minister, ideally, they should reflect different communities, different regions.
Precisely.
So with Kalam, a Muslim, now in the highest office, Rashtrapati Bhavan,
Mm-hmm.
having another Muslim, Farooq Abdullah, as vice president, suddenly got
Tricky.
politically tricky, yeah. It was seen as potentially upsetting a delicate balance.
It wasn't about a law or anything explicit.
No, nothing like that. It was all about political optics, the perceptions, keeping equilibrium within the ruling coalition, and, the broader national picture. So what probably felt like a done deal for Farooq
Poof.
just vanished. Because of Kalam's unexpected, totally overwhelming rise. It wasn't just, they broke a promise. It was this collision of his ambition with these bigger, unspoken political dynamics.
Exactly. It's fascinating. And to really get why it unfolded like this, we need to rewind a bit. Look at the context of early 2002.
Yeah, what was the political weather like?
Well, you had the NDA government, Vajpayee at the helm, navigating some pretty choppy waters. The 2001 parliament attack was still fresh in everyone's minds.
And the situation in Kashmir was, as always, incredibly sensitive.
Always. And Farooq Abdullah himself, he was in a kind of nuanced spot. I mean, he consistently argued for Kashmir within India, pushed back hard against separatists.
He was definitely seen as pro-India.
Oh, absolutely. But at the same time, some hardline elements, they maybe viewed him with a bit of suspicion. He represented a region with, let's face it, a unique and often strained relationship with Delhi.
Right. And adding to all this was Farooq's own understanding, his firm belief that he'd gotten the nod for the vice presidency.
From the top?
Yeah, from Vajpayee himself and Deputy PM L.K. Advani. Some accounts say those talks started maybe even back in 2001. He genuinely thought this move was agreed upon.
And this is where A.S. Dulat's book, The Chief Minister and the Spy, becomes really valuable.
Ah, yes, Dulat, former Raw chief.
Right. And he knew Farooq very well, had a long relationship. His book gives this incredible insider view of those behind-the-scenes talks, the promises apparently made.
Yeah, Dulat's account really lays out this plan. Ease Farooq out of Kashmir, move him to the national stage, which then lets Omar take over as CM.
Seems straightforward.
And there's that anecdote, isn't there, about Brajesh Mishra, Vajpayee's key advisor, suggesting governor's rule in J&K for free and fair elections.
Which Farooq apparently agreed to.
Yeah, because he saw it lining up perfectly with his own move to Delhi. He thought all the pieces were falling into place.
Dulat also writes that by May 2002, Farooq was starting to feel, well, uneasy.
Doubts creeping in.
Yeah. There's this really telling moment where Farooq apparently asks Dulat point blank, what's Delhi really planning? And then he says it, I don't trust them. I don't trust Delhi.
Wow. So even with assurances from the top, that underlying suspicion was there. Maybe just years of navigating that complex Kashmir-Delhi relationship.
Could be. It's telling, though. Now, it's also crucial to remember the initial thinking around the presidential succession.
Right, before Kalam emerged.
Yeah. The sitting vice president, Krishan Kant, was widely seen as the natural successor to President K.R. Narayanan.
That wasn't unusual historically. VP often moved up to president.
Correct. And initially it seemed like both Vajpayee and Sonia Gandhi were okay with Kant, but his candidacy ran into trouble within the NDA itself. L.K. Advani, in particular, wasn't keen.
Why was that? Old history.
Yeah, seemed to stem from way back the fall of the Janata government in '79. Kant had played a role related to the RSS dual membership issue.
Those long political memories.
Exactly. Those old wounds hadn't healed. Advani and others in the BJP just weren't going to back Kant's elevation.
So, Kant's path was blocked? What then?
Well, Vajpayee then floated P.C. Alexander, former top bureaucrat, governor, well-respected guy, kind of a compromise candidate.
Okay. Did that fly?
Nope. Congress rejected that one. So now you've got this deadlock. They needed a consensus candidate, someone who could unite the NDA, maybe even get the opposition on board, or at least make it hard for them to oppose.
And that's the moment for Kalam.
That's the aha moment. Suddenly Kalam, outside politics, Muslim scientist, national icon, impeccable reputation.
Transcended party lines.
Completely. In that stalled context, politically, it was, well, genius.
No doubt. His acceptance was huge. But, like we said, that very popularity, his election, slam dunk for him, a slam dunk against Farooq's VP hopes.
Because of that unwritten rule. The diversity calculation kicked in hard.
The minority math, as you call it.
Exactly. Muslim president now in office. So, politically, having a Muslim vice president, too, was seen as, well, untenable, at least by key factions in the government.
Nothing against Farooq personally, necessarily?
No, it wasn't about his abilities or his standing. It was purely that broader political calculation, maintaining that perceived representational balance. It just shows how that delicate act often overrides individual ambitions, doesn't it?
Starkly illustrates it. And then that final, almost ironic twist.
Krishan Kant?
Yeah. The guy who might have become president, keeping the VP slot potentially open for Farooq. He passed away just 2 days after Kalam was sworn in.
Just underscored the finality of it all for Farooq, really. The path he thought was clear, the promises he believed in.
No.
Gone.
So how did Farooq react? Must have been bitter disappointment.
Well, you'd imagine a mix, right? Disappointment, certainly, but maybe also a bit of a grim vindication, that skepticism he voiced to Dulat.
I don't trust Delhi.
Sadly, it proved right in his case. The assurances just didn't hold up against the political realities that emerged.
And meanwhile, back in Kashmir, The elections went ahead under governor's rule.
Yes, central administration took over for the polls, and while Omar Abdullah was definitely positioned as the heir in the national conference,
It wasn't the smooth handover they had planned.
not quite the seamless transition Farooq probably envisioned as part of that original two-step strategy. Things got more complicated on the ground.
So looking back at this whole episode, what are the big takeaways for us?
Well, first, just the short unpredictability of politics, isn't it?
Definitely. Best laid plans.
Exactly. Can get totally derailed by unexpected events, surprise figures. Second, it really shines a light on how complex, how subtle the role of diversity calculations can be in top-level decision-making.
Those unwritten rules are powerful.
Very powerful. And third, it's a potent reminder, isn't it, about how fragile trust can be in political alliances, how promises, even seemingly firm ones, can just evaporate.
Yeah, it feels like this specific story really reveals those larger forces always churning away in Indian democracy.
It does, and you also have to think about the implications for the Kashmir-Delhi relationship.
Right. If regional leaders feel promises from the center aren't kept.
It breeds resentment, doesn't it? It can complicate an already incredibly delicate dynamic. That perception of broken trust, it can linger.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also important, I guess, to contrast Farooq's setback with what came next.
With Kalam's presidency itself, which was truly remarkable.
Inspiring, really. His focus on science, education, empowering young people.
He became such a beloved figure. His legacy is huge, still inspires millions. So while his rise changed Farooq's path, Kalam's presidency ultimately had this incredibly positive national impact.
Which leaves you thinking about the human side of it all,
Yeah.
behind the big political narratives, the strategies.
There are personal ambitions, hopes, and, yeah, big disappointments, too.
And the Abdullah family is still very much part of Kashmiri politics. Kalam's legacy endures. It reminds you that these individual stories, their impacts, they really do resonate for years.
So as we wrap up thinking about this unexpected turn in 2002, maybe the thing to ponder is how often history's big shifts aren't driven by, grand declarations.
But by these quieter collisions.
Yeah, collisions of individual goals, ambitions, and those unspoken rules of the political game.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. And if this deep dive has got you thinking, we definitely encourage you to dig deeper. Look into Farooq Abdullah's career, APJ Abdul Kalam's life and presidency, that whole political era of the early 2000s.
There's so much more there.
Yeah, it gives you an even richer picture of this incredible intersection of, well, ambition and destiny.